Very much indeed. That's our political editor, Brian Taylor. Let me just remind you, we are expecting a statement from the First Minister. Maybe lockdown's the wrong word. They don't want to use the word lockdown. Maybe restrictions. We don't know which bits of the country, but 5:30 or maybe 6. If it comes, we will bring it to you live. Drive Time with John Peaty. And there was this protest, wasn't there, against COVID-19 restrictions, and it's been slammed as deeply irresponsible by the National Clinical Director, Jason Leach. He told our colleagues on Good Morning Scotland that he couldn't understand why protesters gathered in Edinburgh to listen to coronavirus sceptics, vaccine conspiracy theorists, and those who oppose mask wearing. We'll hear from Professor Leach in a moment. But first, Dr. Richard Ennos wrote to the Scottish Government at the start of lockdown saying that its approach to care homes was incorrect. He disagrees with the majority of the UK Government and Scottish Government strategies, and he was one of the guest speakers at the Edinburgh event.
The message that I was trying to get across were two things. First of all, that we have very little to fear, and that the dangers that it does pose, we have solutions to those, which don't involve massive changes in the way society works. The imposition of the lockdown policy at the moment is not necessary. And the second message was the government reaction is causing more deaths now and will cause far more deaths in the future than the virus itself.
Can we take them separately then? First of all, you're saying this isn't that dangerous a virus, but we're constantly being told by the government and by our scientists and by many doctors this is a really dangerous virus. It's not gone away.
It certainly is a virus that kills people, but it has what's been calculated as an infection fatality rate. That is, if you catch the infection, probability of you dying is 0.3%. So that means that 99.7% of people survive. 80% of people who catch this virus will be completely asymptomatic. Those people who do catch the virus, many of them, the effect will be like a bad flu. Those people who are actually hospitalized, then we do have very good treatments for these. And the other thing to remember is that this is a virus which does not affect children. This is a virus which tends to kill people who are very old, and there are people who have got many other underlying serious medical conditions. And the people that we need to protect are those older people. Healthy people of working age have almost nothing to fear from this particular virus. There are deaths going on at the present time because of the way in which the National Health Service has been modified to take into account a virus which is not serious.
Oh, the whole protest was kind of slammed by Clinical Director Jason Leach as being irresponsible. What you're saying is very much anti the government stance just now, the Scottish Government stance, and indeed the UK Government stance. We're constantly being reminded how dangerous this virus is. It's not gone away. You might not have a symptom, but you might infect your granny. She might die. What qualifications do you have to call into question the Scottish Government policy?
I'm a scientist. I analyse data, and I can tell you that the way in which the Scottish Government and the British Government is interpreting the data which is coming back and being collected and coming back is incorrect. And the policies that they are adopting in the face of overwhelming data which tells us that the virus is not a serious virus, that the epidemic has gone already, that we don't need all these measures. And I can also tell you that we have the facts and figures which tell us that the policies which they are adopting are killing more people than we would ever suffer from the virus itself.
But lockdown's worked, hasn't it? It's lockdown. It's prevented the virus killing people.
There have been a number of scientific studies which compare the effects of lockdowns across numerous countries to see whether there's a significant effect of the lockdown. And actually, there is no effect of lockdown. Disease would have come down as it has normally without the lockdown. And we can see this because there's an experiment that's gone on. In Sweden, they did not lock down in the same way as us. And if you look at the curve of the numbers of deaths in Sweden, it's almost exactly the same as it is here. And indeed, if you look at the numbers of people per million dying in Sweden, it's lower than in Scotland. You might think that that's counterintuitive, but that is what the data tell us.
Do you know who would disagree with you? Devi Sridhar.
Yes, well, I completely disagree with Debbie Sridhar's way of going about looking at this particular crisis.
Why?
Because she has adopted a policy of completely eliminating the virus. So her policy is called a zero COVID policy. Now, this is something which is hardly ever been done before. It only may be done in one particular case for smallpox. We already have lots of infections, came in from very many places. We're applying this policy after there's been a widespread spread of this virus throughout the country. Now, that kind of a policy where you eliminate a virus can only be useful where you've just got one or two places where it's coming in. You can identify where those places are. You can stop it at source. We're way past that. 80% of people are asymptomatic, so we don't know whether they carry the virus at all. This means we would have to test the whole of the population, and we wouldn't have to test them just once. We'd have to test them numerous times, and the enormous amount of testing that would be required is just completely beyond our capacity. The third reason why this is a ridiculous policy is that the test that we have for the virus does not tell us whether we have an active virus in a person. It's being called by the media a case. It's not a case at all. It's just that we can detect that at some time in the past, perhaps, there has been viral infection, but it's probably been removed now. And Scotland is not an island. This is an endemic virus now. It's throughout the world. And so the policy that she has adopted is completely unworkable and completely inappropriate. And it is having dramatically serious effects on the Scottish economy. What this will lead to eventually is poverty. And what does poverty equal? Deaths. There's a huge association between deaths and the level of poverty in a community. And that's why those people gathered in Edinburgh to protest against what's going on at the moment. And they see that there's far more danger with the policies that are being implemented at the moment than from the virus itself.
Do you know, Richard, I could get Jason Leach on now, and I could get Devi Sridhar on now. I could probably even get the First Minister on now, and they'd regard you almost like a flat Earth person. You don't believe established science. You don't believe what they believe.
It's a very strange phrase to use, a flat Earth scientist.
I disbelieve it. That you're not believing the information in the right way.
Sorry, could I just explain what a scientist is?
I know exactly what a scientist. I'm an engineer. I'm a trained engineer. I'm just putting to you. I'm putting to the point to you that they would say to you.
A scientist is somebody who does not believe anything. A scientist is constantly a person who is questioning, and they're looking. They have different ideas in their head about what the answer to a particular problem may be, and they don't fix it and then say, "Oh, that's my belief." They look at the data and they change their mind according to what the data tells us. And what I'm telling you is, I've looked at the data. Loads of other people have looked at the data, and they've come to completely different conclusions from the ones which allegedly the government have come to. And I would debate those three people any day of the week. I have no problem in debating them. I can provide you with all the evidence which supports my interpretation of the data and which totally refutes their idea of the data.
So why do you think they're doing it? If it's wrong, why are they doing it?
Why are they doing it? Well, you may be trying to lead me on to something which will then brand me as a conspiracy theorist. All I'm doing as a scientist is saying they have not interpreted the data correctly. I don't know the reasons why they've chosen to do that, or maybe they're too thick to understand what's going on. Either way, it's having immense harm for huge numbers of people in Scotland. And I will not be drawn on, the reasons why they might be doing this. Then we're into the realms of conspiracy theory, and if we do that, then people like me will have their credibility taken away from them. I've seen it happen so many times already in this pandemic, and it's something which I'm afraid has been done by people in the mass media.
Richard Ennos, thank you so much for talking to me. Well, there we are. Well, we did ask to speak to Devi Sridhar and Jason Leach, but neither was available. Your texts are welcome, 80295. Here's what the National Clinical Director had to say about all these protesters on GMS this morning.
I honestly think it's irresponsible. In summary, I don't quite understand it either. I mean, I didn't go to hear the speeches for obvious reasons. I don't quite understand what they think. Do they think the 880,000 people who have died globally were either making that up, or that doesn't matter, or they have a better route out? If they have an alternative for the 194 countries of the world that the WHO haven't thought of, then I'd be delighted to hear it. I don't quite get it.
Well, that was Jason Leach, and I'd love your text on this. And obviously, we're treading a really careful line here, because that's an opinion that does not tie in with any of the many of the European governments, nor the UK government, nor the Scottish government, and their approach. But there are scientists saying that they think